an outside company for maintenance and property management. Before we jump into the seminar content, I first just want to say thank you to all the volunteers serving our house corporations, in particular during this difficult time that we're experiencing. I also want to encourage you to follow the information that's available in the housing section on the figam.org website, as well as the newsletters and other emails that we're sending that have ideas and information and resources for you regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and possible issues that you could be facing. We have a great session planned for you tonight. We have 3 great companies represented in the area of property management, specializing in fraternity and sorority property management. And we have some great topics to talk about. I want to remind you that we'll have an opportunity at the end of the session for questions and answers. So if you have a specific question, you can type those in the box on your screen, and we'll answer those at the end. The session is going to be recorded and will be posted on the figam.org website under our webinar tab in a few days from the end of this presentation. So if somebody that is a part of your group didn't get to listen in on this, you'll be able to access this later on. Okay, so at this point, what I'd like to do is start by having our panelists introduce themselves one by one. So if we'll have, let's have Martin start from Alpha.
Sure. Are there any specific things you want me to cover in the introduction in terms of background, or is there like 2 or 3 points you want?
Yeah, just a 1-minute intro on yourself and your company.
Okay. All right. I'm Martin Smith, and I am a principal in Alpha Fraternity Management. The other principal is Alan Lutz, and we have been specifically in fraternity and property management for 15 plus years. And we manage properties throughout the country. And my fraternal affiliation is with Phi Gamma Delta, and Alan's is with Delta Tau Delta. Is that what you're looking for, Steve?
Sure, that's fine. There's no right answer, just what you want to share.
All right.
Sure. Let's jump over to CSL, excuse me.
That's all right, Steve. This is Steve Ratterman with CSL Management. Founding partner with me tonight is my brother, Woody Ratterman, who is our managing partner. Our affiliation is, I'm a Sigma Nu and from Indiana. Woody is a Beta Theta Pi from Middle Tennessee State University. We've been, CSL has been around for 10 years. I've been doing fraternity and sorority housing for 15 years, formerly the head of the Sigma Nu National Housing Corporation. We're on roughly 150 campuses all across the United States. So that's a quick overview of us.
Great. Super. And our last panelist is from the Kalos Group, formerly known as GRS.
My name is Matt Spearing. I'm a principal here with the Kalos Group. The other principal with our firm is John Murdoch, and he wasn't available because tomorrow is his birthday and he has plans tonight. Our company started in 2007. We work with fraternities and sororities on construction development and property management, and we're located here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And we work with groups all over the country.
Super. Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks for doing those introductions. As you can imagine with the panel, what we're going to do is direct questions to one of the panelists, and then we'll rotate through the questions. So the first question will have everybody actually participate in, and that is a timely question. What is the one thing that will be different in regard to property management that house corporations should be anticipating when they reopen in the fall, obviously relating to the COVID issue? And let's start with Alpha.
Well, the reason Alan's not here tonight, we've been doing a series of webinars for our clients. I think we've had over 250, 300 attendees over the last 2 weeks. So Alan's had to reschedule one on those tonight. So I mean, that's kind of a difficult question because there's so many unknowns that are still out there in terms of what we're facing. But the one thing I think is clear is that we're going to be held to a higher standard. The house corporations have to be prepared in terms of budgeting for issues such as social distancing, issues in meal service changes, the cleanliness of the property and how that's maintained are going to be some of the primary topics that we have covered in our webinars with our clients and other interested parties.
Okay, Kalos?
Yeah, I would agree with Martin on those points. But I think also, once things kind of come to fruition, I think developing policies and then managing and communication is going to be a big factor in kind of the management of the organization starting in the fall. I think cleaning and then the process of meal service and social distancing is going to be different. So I think working with each client and trying to develop what that plan is and then managing it and communicating it, as we move forward.
Okay. How about this? CLS?
I would agree with both Matt and Martin on this. So far, the cleaning and food service changes are going to be probably the two biggest things, the higher expectations. I think the idea of allowing the undergraduates to clean facilities is probably going to be a thing of the past. I think probably the bigger challenge will be moving forward, though, is the financial impact that this could have, not only with the idea of higher levels of cleaning and care of the property, but also, quite frankly, from a social distancing standpoint, how that affects our occupancy levels and rates and what that does to our overall level of income, in addition to the higher level of expenses related to cleaning and those kinds of items. So I think the financial impact is something that we've all got to be very careful about and very cognizant of moving forward.
Okay. Great. So let's jump to one of our next question. Before we get into some of the specifics about using a third-party property manager, let's discuss some of the observations that you see are key in fraternity housing today. Martin, why don't you give us your thought on that?
The things that are happening in changes today is it's kind of going in a couple of different directions. One is there's a lack of ability amongst the undergraduate chapters members to be able to do a lot of the maintenance or upkeep that is oftentimes expected of them from a house corporation. And on the flip side, their parents and their group kind of demand the chapter house be held to a higher standard. So, like with every generation and the group in 2020 is not going to be like the group in 2000. And this group I think we are facing an area that COVID just talked about, where the houses need to be held to a higher standard and then maintained to a higher standard that represent the principles of the fraternity, and the expectation that the undergraduates are going to be able to do that is unrealistic. So I don't want to go on forever, but I'm keeping the answer short and concise as much as I can.
Yeah, no. Yep, I appreciate that. We've got, probably 18, 20 questions to go through, so
right.
That's great. Matt, prior to taking over property management for a chapter house, what are the 2 or 3 biggest concerns that you see in terms of the undergraduates trying to care for a house?
I would say that probably the 2 biggest glaring issues would be, one is policies and market rate pricing. I think market rate pricing is probably one of the biggest threats to Greek housing, and kind of from a property management perspective, as it's kind of a process that's kind of a circle. You have to develop revenue in order to be able to maintain your facility, and then also when you maintain your facility, the members want to live there, and so it also kind of dovetails into deferred maintenance. Is probably the other item that I'd say would be lacking. Deferred maintenance can add up to cost over time and lead into large capital projects. And so, managing the facility from a revenue side into the maintenance side, and creating those policies is important.
Great. Steve, tell us about common concerns that you see regarding local house corporations today in general. What are those common concerns that you're seeing?
I think there's several out there that we see. One is a gradual decrease in the number of volunteers that are participating in their organizations, as our time constraints have gotten more difficult over the years. I think we see that as a big challenge. I think the challenge of, as Matt mentioned, not charging market rent is a huge issue. And because of that, we're not seeing the reinvestment in the chapter house, which is creating a lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of challenges to the upkeep. To Martin's point about the higher expectations that parents are having, those are starting to get more noticeable, and I think we're going to see that compounded many times over as we move forward into the fall. So, and the third probably biggest thing is not operating as a business. We are all fraternal organizations, but the reality is that on the housing side, we're a business operation. And if we're not running it as a business, if we're not running it to produce a profit or free cash so we can reinvest in the property, so that we can have sinking funds for boilers and roofs and big ticket items like that, then we're not operating as we should. It's amazing sometimes to see how often very successful people check their, as we say sometimes, they check their brain at the door when they're walking in the fraternity house, and they leave their business brain sitting out there waiting till they come back outside of the house. So really need to operate these as businesses as much as anything else.
Great, thank you. So this is going to be a question for all 3 of our panelists. Obviously, besides hiring your company, if you could give a chapter house or house corporation one piece of advice to better manage their house, what would that piece of advice be? Let's start with Matt.
I think it has to go back to what we just talked about. I think creating policies and market rate pricing is kind of the fuel that feeds the organization, and being able to do that, we'll be able to develop widespread preventive maintenance plans that prevent deferred maintenance, be able to handle things during summer projects, to create value for the facility, which then goes back and creates value for the organization. So I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice.
All right. Steve or Woody?
Woody, why don't you take this one?
Okay. I would say starting with a baseline, and if you don't have a good baseline of whether you're new to the board or new to just the world of being on the house corporation as a volunteer in that capacity versus others as advisors, a lot of times we're operating from an unknown circumstances related to our facilities, and you don't have a good baseline to work from. So whether you're looking to engage property management, whether you're looking to we're seeing more and more on the front of house directors. We're seeing campuses require us to have house directors if our national organizations don't have such policies. So we're seeing more and more out there where if they don't have a policy related to house directors, especially at the university level, they're considering it. So, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but certainly adds a new dynamic operationally, both from the facility itself and then also from your financial standpoint. But the simplest thing is just to get a good baseline. If you've not had a third party do an assessment of your facility or someone to come, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional, it could be just a good alum that's in the construction business or knows something about real estate in your facilities, to walk through and come up with a good 5-year CapEx plan of what your capital needs are going to be, and where you should be prioritizing it based on to the earlier comments on deferred maintenance and where we're going to have to spend some money. And just understanding, do we have good vendors? Do we have a baseline or a 5-year CapEx plan? Do we have the proper controls for our finances in place? And just level set, if you will, because many times we jump in and we're all excited to be volunteering and we're going to take the world on in terms of bringing our facilities up to the standards that we all hope and expect. But that takes time, and it takes a long process and a disciplined process to do it right. So we'd recommend you really have a good baseline and a starting point to which to work from.
Okay, great. Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the most challenging questions on this grid tonight, because as Matt and Woody have said, one of the first services that we offer is basically the planning and objective service of what that is for the house corporation. And as both Matt and Woody have said, if you don't have that as a business operation, you can't be successful. So if you don't have a game plan of understanding what your needs are, what your rates have to be, what your expenses are, what your net cash has to be, what your typical CapEx is, what you need to be doing and spending in repairs every year, etc., you can't execute anything. And that's part of the issue. When we look at the housing corporations across the country and do analysis for national organizations, it's like less than 15% of the houses have probably meet the standards of the houses that the CSL or GRS, CALIF manage, like we manage, in terms of what their reserves are, how they go about managing it and stuff. So, when you look at the housing corporations that are successful, they're corporations that have a lot of active volunteers, and they are able to break out those pieces, and that's becoming, that's, as I said, that's the case in less than probably 15% of the houses across the country.
Okay. I'm already seeing a trend here, you guys. With your answers, and we're just in the first couple of questions. All right. So, Martin, actually, we're going to stay with you for a second, and we're going to give the others a chance to just elaborate or differentiate if they want.
Sure.
Some people on the call tonight or listening later don't really necessarily understand the broad categories of services that a property management company can offer to a house corporation. So give us a kind of a 1,000-foot overview of the kinds of services that your organization provides.
Sure. So I'll be, again, pretty hopefully concise on this. We focus on 5 core services, which are planning, financial, basically operations, which is the financial is the reporting, collection, the operations is working with the chapter, lease documents, budgeting, things of that nature. Obviously, the planning is what we talked about beforehand, creating the roadmap and the objectives that everybody's working towards so everybody knows what the other people are doing. Then there's the facility management end, and then there's the compliance end. We're working with the universities on the campuses that we're at and the local cities, et cetera, to make sure that the houses are compliant. So those are the 5 main core services that cover everything on our full service menu. We also have established breaking those services down into what we call member services, where for remote campuses, we can do the planning functions and do the member service, which is the collection, financial bill pay, budgeting, etc. functions. And we also have broken it out where we can do the facility management functions on specific campuses, where we implement our inspection protocols and our standard calendar services of how to maintain the house, which is, if you guys, it's probably similar to what Matt does and Stephen Woody do. So it's, just making sure all the systems in the house are checked and operated and work properly, and the house is maintained to a specific standard. So we have specific protocols and calendar services of what's done to maintain the house that way. And we have a specific protocol, if you will, through our inspection system and the people that we have on campuses. So our primary focus is having people on campus that work specifically for us, and we work with several houses on the campuses that we're at. So they are really focused on taking care and understanding what's involved with fraternities, because those properties are unlike commercial buildings or apartment buildings or a few managed residences. Trying to manage and maintain a fraternity is a completely different animal.
Okay. How about Steve or Woody? Do you have anything to add or share that would be a little different than what Martin shared?
No, primarily the same thing. We call them buckets. With our work, we do assessments where we come in and provide that baseline analysis that Woody was talking about a few minutes ago. We do day-to-day management, which covers everything that Martin was just discussing a second ago, along with project management, everything from helping find a new location to architects, engineers, GCs, whatever's needed to get the project done, renovations, all that. And then the final bucket is education and consulting. We do house director trainings, board trainings, National House Corporation trainings, National House Corporation staff training. So we've done all kinds of training and education work through that division. So kind of like Martin, and we're kind of broad based in a lot of things that we're doing out there.
Great. Okay, Matt, Kalos, anything different that you want to share?
It's fairly similar to both Martin and CSL. We do kind of the CapEx plans and the facility analysis up front. We can even go in depth to more of a life cycle analysis. We do kind of the day-to-day facility management, where we've got a property manager that's assigned to your specific property and handles, the preventive maintenance, the move-in, move-out process, and kind of capital projects over the summer. Then there's kind of the financial piece that we do leasing, helps set kind of business policies. And then we also are heavy into kind of construction development and management, where we work with groups on planning, develop performas, help hire architects, develop scopes of projects, and then handle the day-to-day management of kind of large capital projects.
Okay, great. So I'm hopefully going to summarize that you guys have some categories, buckets, whatever you'd like to call them, of services. And I think ideally you probably all would prefer that somebody hire you for the total package of things that you do, but it sounds like, I believe, all of you will do some level of what we might call a la carte services. Let's just, for the next question, we'll throw it back to Matt. What percentage, roughly, of your clients, when they start with you, will either use a full package of services or limited services? And if they start with limited services, what is the most common one that they'll start with?
From our property management package, which is leasing and the day-to-day facility management, I would say probably 85 to 90% do the full package. Now, kind of how we break it up is our cost is based on number of visits to the site visits to the property. So that varies with some clients, but typically probably around 85 to 90% do the full package based on a specific number of visits. And then typically, if people, I would say most people, when they start out, most use the facility management side of it. Some elect to do their own leasing because they have their own processes and have alums that are engaged in that level of the business. So I think that's probably the majority of what we're seeing.
Okay, great. Steve or Woody, from your experience, who should be hiring the property management company, the chapter or the house corporation? And does it make a difference?
It should definitely be the house corporation. The chapter by nature is not, in my opinion, and in our opinion, is not going to appreciate necessarily anyone coming in and telling them what to do. So the challenge is going to be, if the chapter hires the property management corporation, you're probably going to be getting a lot of pushback from the people that may or may not be taking proper care of the facility. With the house corporation, it's more of a partnership. in planning and working out a process to make improvements to the house, to keep the house up to code, to keep repairs and maintenance caught up, and inspections caught up, and all those kinds of things. It's a much more of a partnership with the house corporation than it is with the chapter.
Okay. All right. Next question. We're going to take over to Alpha and Martin. What do you see as an advantage of using an outside company for property management?
That's pretty straightforward, and go into your cost questions that are following up. House corporation boards are volunteer boards, and boards by definition set policies, but they don't necessarily implement policies. And as volunteers, it's very difficult for the boards to have the resources, capability, time to implement policies. So by hiring a property management company, they have the ability now to act as a board, set policies, and the management company gives them the ability to implement that. So if we go back to what Woody said, and you start with what Woody is referring to as a baseline, or what we would develop in our planning and development strategy, our business plan strategy, it allows the house corporation to develop a business plan and execute to achieve goals. So if you look at our clients, every one of our clients has more money than when we started, and they've done more projects and more repairs, and the house is in better condition than when they hired us. So the ability to get stuff done and execute, and the other aspect that many people don't see is it greatly enhances the communication and relationship between the house corporation and the chapter, because the chapter is now seeing activity and things done and improvements. And so there's more of a feeling that both parties are working together for the common good and excellence of the chapter. So there's two things going on. Number one is the house corporations are better able to achieve their objectives. And the other thing that is probably the most misconstrued thing that's asked probably all of the time is, how much do you cost? And the fact of the matter is, we don't cost anything. In every case, we generate revenue for these house corporations. And so that answers like three of your questions below, is that, you know, groups should not be backing away from looking at house corporations because they're afraid, or a property manager or a management firm because of their fear of cost. If they're failing or not doing well, it's for a reason. And it's because they're not operating or don't have the ability to operate that well as a group. And by getting a professional group in there to turn it around is really what makes the difference.
Okay. Matt, if you had to measure what percentage improvement do you feel is reasonable for a house corporation to expect to see improvement within 60 days of involvement of a chapter house, or after, and then maybe after a year? What can they? How fast will they see changes and things? That's what we're trying to get to with this.
Okay, from an improvement standpoint, it's kind of a process, and a little bit how Martin described it previously. I think in the first 60 days, I think the vast amount of improvement is based in developing a framework to move forward, and I think improved communication and developing a plan. And I think in the first 60 to 90 days, that's probably the most important progress that you can make. Now, when a lot of times when you implement that, there's sometimes a cultural change within the organization, that causes potential issues, because things are changing. So I would say probably after the first year to definitely 2 years is when you kind of see how the organization can really run like a well-oiled machine. And, you know, I think a big part of our services from a property management standpoint is a database of information on the facility, and then also creating kind of quality board rotation. You know, a lot of these groups, you know, one or two house corporation members always, you know, has been the main person for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. And, you know, they get bogged down. And so I think our services help, you know, alleviate a lot of the stress and issues that these organizations face.
Okay. Steve or Woody, at least for your company, who's the primary point of contact that a house corporation would have with your organization, and what is the skill set background of that individual?
Well, for the house corporation in general, it would be generally Woody or I. But for the actual day-to-day operation of the chapter house, we have an operations team that's assigned to each property. There's basically assigned regionally. So we have an operations manager and operations specialist that work with each of our chapter properties. And they come from we've kind of recruited a wide variety of individuals, primarily because we feel like they help us to better serve our clients. So we've got people that have got backgrounds in logistics and real estate, construction, you know, just general business management, and those kinds of skill sets that really a lot of what we do is obviously real estate oriented and logistically oriented, as far as a lot of coordination, a lot of getting people where they need to be when they need to be there, getting the properties inspected, those kinds of things. So that combination of business management, real estate, logistics has served us pretty well. And that's the general background that we have with each of our with each of our teams.
Okay, great. All right, Martin, for a house corporation considering hiring a company like yours who might be unfamiliar with the cost, and this is good because you touched on this, you can either elaborate on your comment that it really doesn't cost, that you save them money, or you can choose to talk a little bit about just what the fee arrangement is, or how the fee is based, or something along those lines. And we'll allow others, as we did earlier, to comment on any differential kind of approach that they take or they want to add to this. Go ahead, Mark.
Sure. So contractually, we charge a percentage fee of the total revenue that we collect, which varies between 6 and 7%. And then if we do break out fees like member services, financial, or the facility management, they get broken out with a set fee or a fixed fee typically, and those range between $800 to $1,000 a month. And again, it depends on the campus and the size of the chapter. So the fee structures at a place like Texas or Alabama might be different than Oregon or Oregon State, because you're looking at chapters with different revenue structures, and one campus may be averaging $400,000 per chapter, and the other might be averaging $800,000 per chapter. So those vary a bit. But as they said, in talking a little bit about what Woody and Steve just talked about, the key factor, like in our key factor, of having guys on campus that meet with the house corporations and meet with the chapter officers on a regular basis. And our facility managers on campus are our employees. So there's a real localized communication piece there that we think is really the critical part in trying to manage to the results that the individual chapter and house corporation need to achieve for their property.
Okay.
Cover it?
Steve or Woody, do you have anything that you want to add or share on this?
Woody, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's when you look at how the systems are priced and what's out there, a good indication is looking at the commercial, what a professionally managed commercial building. And it's not these buildings nowadays, fraternities, sororities with the complexities are certainly more of a commercial than a residential. So if you're out there looking and trying to figure out of how the pricing is developed and how you should be comparing when looking at different organizations, there's a lot of mitigating factors that go into it. You know, for us, we're looking at location, square footage. As Martin said, we look at revenue, number of beds, do they have a house director, et cetera. You know, on the assessment piece, you can get into the square footage calculations. I think the key is just understanding how the fees are charged and making sure you're clear on where the money is going and how it is handled. I think everybody on this panel for sure shares the belief, especially in our industry, in our world, transparency is key. So we've just seen in some circumstances where we've been asked to help is that you don't always know where the money is going, especially as volunteers. You have lives and you look to bring in professional management to help. And I think it's very important that you look at it from a lens of trust and transparency, and just so that the fee structures that are out there are clear. And if they're not clear to you, certainly ask those questions to understand it.
Okay. Matt?
You know, similar to what both other groups talked about, I mean, it really depends upon the specific organization. I mean, some organizations we work with are extremely large, and some are not. So kind of basing our fee is kind of looking through, you know, the revenues and beds and square footage of the building, and being able to put a price to that that's highly competitive. I also think that our pricing, to some degree, we base it on number of visits to the property as well. So, you know, there's ways for groups that initially are struggling financially that we can work with them and then help kind of build that financial base up. So you know, we can work towards more of a full service operation.
And just, you know, I think Martin made a great point, and let's just see, well, I'll come back to this in a second. Okay. So, Matt, what would you say to a struggling chapter house that, you know, maybe hasn't been able to keep it filled, and so revenues have been down? They like the idea of using an outside party, but they don't think they can afford your services. What do you say to a group like that?
I think from an a la carte standpoint, we could put together a package, kind of as I previously mentioned, that would kind of fit the parameters of their financial situation, and then help them build their financial structure to get them to a point where they are profitable. They're making good policy decisions, and so then you know, it's a work in progress. I mean, not many of these groups when we walk in the door are operating at full capacity. I mean, for the majority of them, there's a reason why they're hiring us. It's to help to get to that point. And so, you know, there's there's means and methods and ways we can help them along the way.
Okay.
Sorry, what Matt said.
Yep. Yep.
I just got to say, though, one of the things I think that all three of us would say is that we're sort of, in many cases, turnaround experts. I mean, as we said before, most of these groups are not operating at a level that is at the level or the standard that these groups want. So we all work with them in a way that, I mean, we all love fraternity and we're all in it because we want to see the houses be great. And I think we all work with these groups to get them turned around and get them operating in a sustainable manner.
Yeah. And I think to the other point, and you guys can cover this again if you want towards the end in the closing, but I think the point that I've heard you guys make, and I think you would all concur, is that you enhance the quality of the operation such that the revenue increases. So in effect, these services really don't end up costing additional funds like somebody would think. It's not another expense. Would you guys kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think the key, though, I mean, let's look at, I mean, the reality of it is that more money is going to go out on that front end than we tend to think in terms of where we're spending it. But the reality of it is, when you look at going back, if they have the history of where they've been spending the money, it's really reallocating it in the proper places to where they're getting return on that investment. But when you start introducing professional management or lawn care or cleaning or all these different things that we have by tradition done ourselves as residents or members, when you start adding this and you're doing it in an environment where we're only charging 50 or 60% of market rate, the numbers don't work. So we can all three of these of us, as Jonathan alluded to, we all can appreciate that fact, and we're here at the table because we do love the industry, but we also know that we've got to do better, and we've got to figure out a way to manage our facilities in a way that they're going to be relevant and well sustained to the industry for years to come. And it is different because we used to rely on our members to do a lot of stuff, and they're still great members and they're still great undergraduates, but they come to our universities with different skill sets than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we have to think a little bit differently, especially when it comes to some of these services, and they're not costs that we're used to having. And so it's just really a different mindset, and it takes a little time to make that transition for sure.
Yeah, Steve, we track data. We track data on all our clients of where they started before they hired us and where they are after. And we happily, when clients ask us for a proposal or an engagement, we're happy to share that information with them and to show kind of what the impact is from, developing the strategies and the baseline and the business plan and where the result is. So they're pretty dramatic in terms of revenue increases and cash increases to which goes back to your question about where you are. And I thought Matt answered it pretty well in terms of what can be expected in days and et cetera. But the differences between the chapters in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years is pretty significant in terms of gross revenue, in terms of, as I said, gross revenues, repairs, capital improvements, and cash in the bank, which is critical. It's hard to operate any organization with the cash in the bank.
Perfect. All right, going to our next question. We'll direct this to Steve or Woody, and that is, how would you explain to our listening audience the difference between using your services for property management compared to a cleaning company or a local handyman?
Well, I think that the difference is maintenance versus management. I think any of the three of us would tell you the process that we use is all about management. It's all about trying to have a plan, execute the plan, make improvements, be able to show consistency, be able to show tracking and history. If you just have the maintenance local handyman showing up every once in a while to look for work, number one, he's probably going to find it, whether it needs to be done or not, and or whether it exists or not. And you've really got no checks and balances, no way of controlling what's going on at the house. Same thing with the cleaning company. It's just they're really not equipped to properly manage and maintain a multi-million-dollar facility, and that's like I said, it's a completely different animal between maintenance and management, and and you're going to get proper maintenance through management versus just haphazard maintenance.
Okay, great. Matt, talk to us a little bit about communication. How does your company communicate with the House Corporation and the chapter? Who do you most regularly communicate with, and how frequent would that, how frequent would that be? And I'm not saying specifically whoever is assigned to that House Corporation, right?
Right. So, typically we would have a contact, somewhere with boots on the ground, and, whether it's a house manager, if they don't have a house director, or would be with the house director. And so whether we're, visiting that property or not visiting that property, we're in, daily to weekly communication with those individuals. With some groups, we schedule, weekly to bi-weekly conference calls to run through either, items that need to be done that are on the list or have been done. From a house, then we also communicate with house corporations probably just as frequently, just from an approval standpoint, and getting, reviewing through different, different things that depending on the time of year, whether it's winter break, whether it's summer break or spring break, and what are our plans for those periods. And then we also send out to each of our clients kind of a monthly report detailing all the work that has been done that month. And so we try to back up all of our communication with documentation as well. So if our property manager makes a site visit, we have site visit reports that we send out as well. So, it depends upon the campus, but, with every group that we work with, I think communication is key, and, staying in touch and being able to manage the work that's been done and planning for the future.
All right, going to jump back to Stephen Woody. What would a house corporation or chapter expect in terms of on-site presence at the house if they retained your organization?
I think it's going to vary a little bit by the needs of the house and the facility. We have some facilities where we have people on site at least once a week, sometimes more frequently. We have other facilities where we may not have someone on, necessarily on site, but once a month or every other month. So it really depends on the needs of the house, what's going on at the property. What are the challenges? Certainly with a fraternity house, more likely than not, you're going to be there more frequently in the beginning than you are in the end. I think we've all pretty much alluded to the fact that as we begin the work with a fraternity house, there's generally a lot to be done. So it's going to be really dependent upon the needs at that time, and with the house and how the men are taking care of the property, what their respect level is, and those kinds of things.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open this next question up to all three of you. We'll start with Martin. What do you feel, Martin, the greatest benefit using a third-party company like yourself brings to a house corporation for property management?
Like I said previously, it allows the board to act like a board and set policies and create the chapter in the chapter facility that they want to have. So the property management company is the implementer for the board and is the tool, if you will, that allows the board to implement their policies and achieve their results. So, and as a result of that, you're going to have the chapter house develop into and become the chapter house that you want it to be in terms of maintenance or in terms of renovating it, or whatever your objectives are, whatever the board wants to happen. And the companies and the property management company, we're actually more of a business management company, allows the guys to get there, achieve those objectives.
Okay. Steve Woody, what your thoughts?
Woody, why don't you take
Greatest benefit? Okay.
Yeah, I think we'd love to tell you about all the benefits, right? But if I had to think of the greatest benefit, I think is to piggyback a little bit on what Martin was saying, but I'd say of all the business elements out there, but it's more of a peace of mind that you have a partner and an industry expert by your side that's there when you need them 24/7. And we're very fortunate in our community, in our industry, that most of our industry partners, whether it's the three organizations here, whether it's our kitchen management firms, whether it's our fundraising firms, you name it, most all of them come from a Greek background and understand that it is a fraternal community and we're all in this for the right reasons. And so we could go on business cases all day long in terms of different elements that we could bring to the table that would benefit not only the house corporation, but the chapter and the experience that the men are having in there all day long. But at the end of the day, if I'm a volunteer and I'm on this board and I'm wanting to know, to me, is I've got a partner that has the subject matter expertise and the resources to shepherd our facility and shepherd us as a board to make the right decisions and ensure that we have a great facility that's serving the needs of the chapter and it's going to be sustained for many generations to come. And that peace of mind, at least from our standpoint, is priceless. So.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, I think the greatest benefit is having kind of professionals in these facilities on a routine basis that can identify issues that a house corporation may not know how to handle that specific issue. There's not many situations where we walk into identifying a problem that we haven't seen before. So having that knowledge and expertise to understanding what the solution is to that problem is extremely helpful in terms with allowing, kind of as Martin mentioned, allowing these, that gives these boards the opportunity to act like a board, and it provides an information and document, kind of a document hub that allows, healthy board rotation, because a lot of these, these are volunteers that have lives and families, and they, getting bogged down in the operation of a fraternity sometimes will, kind of burn a volunteer out. So, you know, our services is important to the volunteers and the organization to kind of run at an optimal level.
Okay, great. All right, so brothers, we're getting towards the end of our questions, so I want to just remind you, if you have a question that you want to pose to our panel, would you type those into your the box on your screen? We'll try to take as many of those as we can in the time we have. To our panelists, here's a softball for you. One last thought or comment that you would like to share. Let's have Matt kick that off.
So just the final thought is you know, hiring a third-party management company is, you know, a very healthy decision for these organizations in order to provide structure and the ability for sustainability for the years to come. And just, you know, want to say thank you to you guys for allowing us to you know, join this panel tonight, and really appreciate it.
Okay. Steve or Woody?
Well, like Matt, we appreciate Fiji doing this evening for its house corporations, and you know, echo Matt. It's you know, sometimes the bravest decision is the hard one, and changing the way that we do business as we move forward is a necessity, because in way too many cases right now, the way we're operating is not appropriate or efficient. I think there's going to be some big game change issues that we're all going to face here in about 90 to 120 days. And we need to be ready to do those. And I think those properties that have professionals that are focused full-time on what it takes to properly manage a fraternity property will be the ones that will thrive as we move forward over the next several years.
Great. Martin, wrap us up with this one.
Yeah, Steve, you know, we've got, you know, you've heard from our group quite a bit, because, you know, we've got like 5 or 6 guys vested or that are Fijis that are participating or part of our company as campus managers and regional managers. And so seeing you guys step up and be active and try to get the information out to the house corporations is much appreciated. And I think everybody likes to see the efforts and wants to see the Fiji chapter houses be great and represent the values of Phi Gamma Delta the way that you know, the national organizations and all of us would like to see that happen. So thanks again for putting this together and, you know, making it work.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. We're going to open this up for questions. Theo's going to feed the questions. I'll let him know who to feed the questions to, unless they're directed to one of you in particular. But brothers, I would also just add, let's remember how we started this conversation. Things are going to probably get a little bit more complicated come fall as a result of the pandemic. So I would tell you that 1848 housing probably has a bias to encourage our house corporations to use the services of a company like these 3 that are represented on our panel. Whether it's because of the challenges and complexities of codes and meeting the compliance regulations from local governments or universities, or the issues related with payroll and hiring and workmen's compensation and things like that. We're a big believer that using outside companies to provide services is really the direction that most of our house corporations should be giving serious consideration to. So I hope that this session has been insightful for you, has given you some new, perhaps new look at what this area of service entails, and gives you some comfort that you can afford this, that they have relevant and valuable services to bring to the table. So with that, let's go to a question. Do we have a question in queue?
Sure. We have a few questions in line. First, we are not at the property. How do we protect ourselves in our leases or contracts? How do we rely on a group of college kids?
All right. Let's see. Matt, do you want to take that question?
So let me just confirm what the question was real quick. If you're not at the property, how do you, I guess, confirm, leases and I guess deposits?
Correct.
Okay. We use kind of in the leasing process. We highly recommend groups to get on the leasing train early. September, October for the next year. And that has really helped with, garnering interest in living in the house and making sure the house is full for the next school year. We use electronic leases like most organizations do now, and require a deposit. And that lease is not, valid or locked in until the deposit is paid. So that's how we lock it in. And then obviously once they move in the fall, I think typically we require, first installment payment, and obviously the deposit's paid before your key is issued.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you. Second, what expectation standards do you set with companies you contract to clean the house prior to the start of next school year?
Are they alluding to like COVID-19 potentially, like the things that we're hearing out on that front, or just if they were going to hire a professional cleaning company?
It doesn't clarify, so let's touch on both if possible.
Okay. Well, I think, on the COVID-19 front, I mean, there's still guidance coming out, right? So it's going to be interesting when it's all said and done in what we are asked to do, or what is realistic to do within our facilities as it relates to trying to prevent any type of spread within the house itself. But you're going to want to make sure with any of the professional companies that you're working with that they have a good understanding of the CDC guidelines and high touch areas, types of chemicals that they recommend, that their teams that are coming in are following OSHA standards related to PPE, all of those different elements that go into it. There are some debates right now out there in terms of doing some of these extensive what we call professional disinfectant cleans, where they're charging anywhere from $2 to $5 a square foot, which we think is quite exorbitant, to say the least, and may not even be remotely necessary when someone walks into the house and the minute they touch something, your baseline is gone. So just take it cautiously, especially because the atmosphere is ripe, if you will, for people to take advantage of fear and take advantage of the situations. We all want to make sure our houses are clean and ready to welcome the members properly, no doubt. But there's certainly an opportunity for people to take advantage of the situation. The reality is most of your cleaning companies out there should be able to clean the facility adequately, following the standards that are out there. But there are certainly good questions that you need to be asking them in terms of the frequency of high touch, what chemicals are they using, and how are they preparing their teams when they come into the facility to ensure that they're protecting not only themselves but the members. As it relates to just pricing overall or expectations of cleaning crews that are there, you certainly want to we always say, and there's a trick of a trade in terms of when we're trying to find good vendors or good partners for our facilities, we go find our other vendors and partners that are already working at that facility. They're doing a good job to provide those recommendations, because they tend to run in circles, especially within our community. So getting good referrals and understanding their background, if they've worked with other houses on your campus, is certainly a big win. But their hiring practices, background checks, security is obviously a big piece of the element, whether it's a men's or women's facility, and just their training and quality control are some key elements that we talk to them about.
All right, great, thank you. Theo, do we have another question?
Would any of the panelists be able to provide a before and after example of a group that used the services prior to and after? Essentially, they're interested in hearing how bad the situation might have been and how your company stepped in to help. Please, no mentioning of any chapter names or university campuses.
All right, let's see, I think, is Martin up for that?
Sure. We have, I mean, like I was saying before, if I looked at, we've had a group that we have, let me just give me a second here. So we had a group that we contracted with in 2006 that had $18,000 in the bank and 10 members living in it. And now they have $298,000 in the bank and have 50 members in it. Their revenue's gone from more than doubled. And as I said, their membership's more than doubled. So those are not, so we, as I said, I think a lot of these groups have work as turnaround experts. And
so
our focus, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, so I mean, for the key for us,
the situation.
Yeah, I mean, so the key for us is having people on the campus in a lot of these cases, where we have our own cleaning services on campuses, or we have campus managers that are meeting with these guys all the time, and facility managers are going through the property every week. So one of the keys in today's world is, as Matt has said, is communication. It's these groups, especially the undergraduates, have a feeling that they need to be heard and responded to. So it's a big element in having a professional group that has a wide background, being able to come in and help a chapter and a volunteer advisory base that has a very limited scope of knowledge.
Okay. I've got a question that I'll throw in there. What happens, and I think it's Matt's turn, what happens if you're contacted by a group that is on a campus where you don't currently have any other clients?
I mean, that, we run into that situation, a good bit. So, our services are tailored to, we can tailor services to the size of the group and organization. Obviously, travel expenses would be billed. And so our effort would be to, once we started working with that organization, to, work with them on building other, working with other organizations on that campus, so we can make it more cost effective for everyone.
Okay. I assume none of you are on every college campus throughout the United States and Canada. Would that be right? So this is common for all three groups?
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet to say that none of us are on every campus.
Yeah. Okay. But, yeah.
Would
All
like to
right.
be, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
All right. What's our next one?
On the campus I'm concerned about, the sophomores are the only ones who live in the houses across the Greek system. Seniors and sometimes juniors rent a house together, which is not necessarily the chapter house. Is that something that you all as property management experts find to be a trend across the country?
Does anybody want to jump on that one?
I'll say it's not necessarily a trend, no. It's kind of specific to the culture of the campus.
Yeah, I would agree. That can be a very campus-oriented situation, but it is becoming more prevalent, unfortunately. I think the key, and I know it's a big conversation point at a lot of the with a lot of the headquarters team members that we work with and talk to, how do we encourage and keep our juniors and seniors engaged? Obviously, study abroad programs have hurt us in that task, that goal, if you will, over the last 10, 15 years. But I think COVID-19 may simplify that challenge a little bit, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. But the reality is that we have to look at what our juniors and seniors need and try to find ways to provide them, and it's usually privacy, space that they're really looking for. And if we can find the right way to do that, we can offer quality food services, I think we have a pretty good chance of encouraging them to stay in the house.
Okay.
I would add
another question?
Another quick thing on that question is, that question leads to the comment about perspective, which is by working with one of the groups, you're getting the house corporation has the ability to tap into, this is the culture at Texas, which actually Texas has a lot of seniors that live in their houses, and where Michigan is more across the board, where Washington may have younger members live in, so they're able to tap in and get data of how things operate across the country and not feel like they're in such a vacuum.
Okay. All right, Dino, do we have another question there?
We have a few more, so please bear with me.
Okay.
This is for all three panelists. So Martin, we'll start with you. For each of these property management organizations, what is the breakdown by geography, especially part of the country, and by type of school, whether that's private 4-year liberal arts, a large public state university, or specialized school?
So our company's broken down into regions, which are pretty much focused on the major power football conferences. One of the easiest ways to break it down. And we go kind of have a central east office and a central west office. And going to the question that was asked earlier, we are formatted in a way where we have regional managers, campus managers, and we have in working with the national organizations that we're working with, we have the ability to break down the services to be the most effective for what the chapter that's acquiring about the services need. That makes sense to you. So if there's somebody in Bozeman, Montana that needs something different, that's going to be different than dealing with someone in Spokane or dealing with someone in or in Seattle, for example. So we have the ability to provide those services and create the results and impact that the chapter needs. And that really comes through the beginning of the process of developing the business plan for the chapter. So we're in all the regions, just not all the places, not all the chapters, not all the universities.
What do you want?
Sure. We have 4 regions: West, Midwest, Southeast, North, South, and Northeast. Of the roughly 150 campuses, that takes us across 42, 43 states. So we've got the country fairly well covered. Now, some of that doesn't necessarily, to Martin's point, we have pockets, like certainly within high traffic and high pockets of campuses like Michigan, Indianapolis in the Indiana area. We have several in that area, and into Illinois, West Coast as you go, Washington to California. As you get into, and then of course, Oklahoma, Kansas is big in the South. So there are certain areas within there, though, that you don't have a high concentration of campuses like you may around the Indianapolis area. But we're just in about all the areas, and we do have some work that we do up in the Canadian area as well. But we mark it down into those 4 regions between the Midwest, which again is Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin. The West, where we start just basically going from Kansas and start heading west. South goes from Kentucky down to Florida, and in all parts in between. And then our Northeast is West Virginia up into Vermont.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, so our, just due to proximity, majority of our clientele is throughout the Deep South, all the way over to Texas and Oklahoma. We do have clientele in the Midwest and up the East Coast, and so that's really we run our business out of our main office here, and our property managers are all local to here. We kind of like to, have in-person office meetings and kind of a centralized, office here in Alabama. So that's kind of the structure of our setup.
Great. Brothers, we realize you've been on the call for quite some time. We're going to do one last question. Note that on your screen you have the contact information for all 3 of our company panelists. So if you have a follow-up that you want to ask these guys, would you be willing to answer questions if you receive emails or calls, guys? I assume you would?
Sure.
Yes?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's close with one more question, Dia.
Perfect. For the last question, who makes the decision regarding vendors used for facility upgrade projects, and who manages or coordinates facility upgrade projects, including property access during the summer months?
All right, who's up for the question?
I'll
say who
try
makes
to
the decision?
From our standpoint, we normally will go out and get several bids, depending on the area and what contractors are available, so on and so forth. But obviously, we definitely want to get several competitive bids to look at, and those are presented to the House Corporation for their review. So in essence, they get to select who they do or do not want to do business with, and then we'll manage the process of the renovation, the upgrade, whatever it might be, through completion, keeping the House Corporation updated on progress and doing progress meetings in the process.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to chime in on that topic before we wrap up? Awesome. Well, brothers, again, I would just want to say thank you for your service to Phi Gamma Delta. Nobody expected these challenges that we're currently facing, and so we have a debt of gratitude that you're not only doing the work that you've been doing for years, but adding to it the complexities of the current circumstance. So thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists for your time and your sharing your expertise. We're grateful for you. Your information is also on our website under housing and vendors. So brothers, if you don't write down the contact information that's been on the screen, know that their contact information is on our phigam.org website under the housing section. Big thanks to Dio for setting us up and helping facilitate this webinar. Brothers, we do webinars 6 times a year. Our next scheduled webinar is in May, and you'll be seeing announcements on that topic in the next couple of weeks. We thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us tonight. Good night.
Thanks. Night.
Yes.